Hey guys, you're listening to What the Fuck Are We Doing? I'm Randy.
And I'm Miranda.
And obviously, little disclaimer, we are recording from home. If you hear
Yep.
anything, deal with it. We have people
It's
at
the
our
holidays, bro.
houses. Yeah, and here we are. But
Mhm.
this is a very interesting topic that I've kind of wanted to do for a while now, and I feel like
Mhm.
now is just the perfect time to do
Mhm.
it.
I agree.
We are
It's not going to
discussing.
be really happy people. We should
Yeah,
just
it's
let you
not.
know.
It's not. It's not like
Disclaimer.
yeah, it's not like fun, and we're not talking
No.
about like sex and boys and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about grief and
Yeah.
grieving.
And I think it's the perfect time because at the end of last season, I lost my grandpa, which was a
Yes.
really big deal. And Randy just lost someone as well.
Yes, I just lost my great grandma last week.
Yeah. So I think we've really been wanting to do it, but I think that we were just waiting for like the right.
It seems like the right moment, and I feel
Yeah.
like there's never like a right moment or a moment you really want to
Want to
discuss
talk about
something
this
like
stuff. Yeah.
grieving or grief. I feel like especially at our age, that's not something you
Because
really just want to be
it's
thinking
really
about.
daunting, yeah, to
It
think
is, at
about.
least for us. So we're gonna get
Yeah, if you
into
know
that.
us, you know we're scared. Well, I
Yeah,
am particularly scared of dying. So,
yeah, especially Miranda. I feel like this
yeah.
too, like this episode will be good because you can see the difference between Miranda and I
Mhm.
with how we
Mhm.
deal with things and how we
Mhm.
feel about that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's crazy. Literally last season is when
Yeah.
you lost your grandpa, and here I
Yeah.
am
I
now.
know. It's
Someone is
almost
gone.
been a year. It'll be a year in January.
It's insane.
I
But
know. It
yeah,
is.
so that's what we're discussing today
Mhm.
because the time
Why
has come.
not?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
we
I feel
needed to
like
get it off our
chest. Like I
chest.
feel like too not enough. I hate to be like not enough people talk about it,
They
but
don't.
like I don't hear anyone our age really talking about it, especially like with my great grandma just passing.
Uh-huh.
I feel like it's very hard for people our age to like know how to go about asking people if they're okay and stuff like
Yeah.
that because I know it's hard for me. Like I really struggle with that
Well,
still
and
till
it's
this
such
day.
a it's a weird thing because
It is.
when someone dies, people aren't okay. So it's like when you ask like how are you doing? You just feel like
I'm one of those people
I don't
like
know
to
what to
be
say.
straight up like from the beginning. I feel so awkward. Like
Same.
I feel so awkward and I feel bad because like this is something I've like thought about a lot, especially like I hate to say it, but when you were going through it with your grandpa, I
Mhm.
remember like obviously like I feel for my best friend and her family, like these are people that I love and they just lost
Mhm.
someone that they love, but I had to like look in the mirror and I'm like, okay, like how do I show up for this person when I
Yeah.
like don't know how? Like I
And
don't
it's
want to ask the
weird.
wrong questions. I don't want to trigger anything. Like, you
And
know, it's
so many
just
people too, like we're all different. So people
yeah.
require very different things. Where like some people want to be left alone, some people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Other people really want to talk about it. Or it's like you don't know. I
And
always feel
every
that
day is
way.
also different.
Different, yeah. And it's interesting to watch my family go through it because we were all so close to my papa. And
Very
like
close.
I talk to I'll go visit my grandma and my grandma's fine talking about it. So my grandma and I will talk about it and we'll tell stories. And then I have some family members where I'm like, I don't know if I should talk about it, or like I'm scared if I bring them up they're just going to instantly
Start
be
crying or
sad. Yeah,
yeah.
and then part of me is like, but we have to talk about it. Like we can't
How do you
just
just not?
yeah, so it's like such a weird, it's like a fine line. And I think you got to get a read on people to figure out, and I think it's even appropriate to be like, how do you want me to help you? Or like, how do you want me to
I
support
feel
you?
like okay, that's like the perfect segue kind of into this because I feel like one one person who's really good who's like has always done that with me was my friend Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed I start doing that now too. I try my best to do that now with friends because it's like how else are you supposed to know what they need or want from like this
Yeah, you have to
friendship or
ask.
relationship, this conversation you have to ask. And I remember before like one time Bailey asked me that and I remember I was like you
You're
know
like,
like
what do
taken
you
back you're
mean?
like what like
Yeah.
what like especially like okay she's not that much younger than me but she is
Yeah.
younger than me so to have a younger girl approach me and be like what do you need right
Yeah,
now
and you're
like
like,
what do you need
what
from me
do
and
you
I was
mean?
like like I'm sad, like I don't know, like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going through it. And I just remember being like, that was the best way to ask me, because
Yeah.
like it's true, like
When a
how is
lot of
she supposed
times
to
you
guess?
don't know either. And so when someone asks you, you're like, I don't know. My family's being so loud. I'm sorry, people.
It's fine.
Um, but sometimes that makes you pause and be like, what do I need?
What is
Like,
it?
yeah.
Because I'm one of those people, like I've noticed it with the passing of my great grandma this time. Like I push a lot aside. So like we've talked about it before here on the podcast, how like Miranda's mentioned it, I mentioned it. Miranda talks about how like she's afraid of like death
Yeah.
and things that surround death. Like she has major
Yeah.
anxiety when it comes to that. So I know as her best friend, I don't bring stuff like that up.
No.
I never bring it up. I never bring
No.
up like random shit. Like I'm sorry to say it right now, like on it,
Yeah.
but like, oh, you know, like one day we're gonna die, or
Yeah,
like,
Randy
how
does
do
not
you
do that
think,
to
like,
me.
you know, like I have conversations with some friends sometimes where it's like, you know, like how do you think you're gonna go? Like me and Miranda do not do that.
No,
Like
we are not
I
the
know
ones.
better. I know better than that. Sorry, my eyebrows bugging me. I need to
They look
fix it.
so nice.
So
Shout
if
out
you're
to
watching
Brow
us,
Down.
you can shout out to Brow Down. She got me in for the
Our
first
queen.
time in like I don't know how long. But anyway, yeah, like we don't talk about that. I could
No.
talk about the other friends, you know, like I could read the room.
Yeah.
I know what's okay and what's not. But recently, with the passing of my great grandma, I'm gonna be honest. Me and her were not close. I had not seen her in a long time, and she wasn't even sick. She was just getting really old.
Yeah.
She was 95 when she just passed away. Like she's lived her life.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I just feel extremely guilty. I'm holding so much guilt.
Yeah.
And right before she passed away, like I hate to say it, but for years now, I remember being like, I should call her. Like I should just go by and see her. Like even without my family, like I drive now, like I could just go. Like she doesn't live super far, but I'm like, I just need to know more about her life. And like I remember telling myself, like, what would I do if something happened to her and I didn't know these things? And now that she's gone, when I found out she passed away, I remember just sitting there and being like we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah,
like we were
but
at the
it's
point where we
still-
were waiting, and it didn't hit me yet. And I remember immediately texting Miranda and being like, oh, she passed away.
Yeah.
And I remember she was just like, oh, are you okay? And I remember I just like didn't reply because I literally was like, I don't know how I feel.
Yeah. Let me
This
think
is
on it.
someone that obviously, like, I love her. I adored her. She was an amazing, incredible woman. Mike fucking Gardner's here. So if you hear that, sorry.
You guys, this is just we're
just going through it. This is how we're dealing with it. But
yeah.
I just remember like sitting there and being like, how am I feeling right now? Like, and I remember my initial like reaction was like, how is my grandpa? Like, that's his mom, you know, how are they doing? And then I just remember like it hit me out of nowhere, but I don't think it really hit me. I think it was just me feeling super guilty for not being around and not letting her know like, hey, I love you. Like I always have.
And I think that that's like so normal, which is weird. But like even I spent more time than I can even imagine with my papa and my grandma. Like they're 10 minutes from us. My grandpa came to everything I ever did. He would come by the house all the time. But even then, like I was still like, fuck, I really should have made
I didn't
more
spend
of an
enough
effort.
time.
Yeah, I should have gone over, and I was there all the time, and we spent so much time together. But I'm like, I should have went over more. Like I went to school right there. I should have stopped by on my way home or things like that. And we can't change.
I feel
things.
like these are things though that we just are gonna like tell ourselves and put them in our head because it's like they're gone.
Exactly,
You know?
and
And
so
we're
you're
trying to
always gonna
make up
wish
all
you could
these
have
things.
done more.
Yeah,
and then I think about it too, and then I'm like, you know. Because I had those moments for sure. I was like, fuck, I should have, you know. And then I was like, but I know, like, and I just something about like the last year that I had with my grandpa, it was during COVID. So we would see them at like, you know, we'd get together for Father's Day in the front yard or we'd swing by for Halloween, things like that. And something like in me was like, you should really like take in those. Ew, I feel like I'm gonna cry. I was like, you should really take in those moments,
too, so
and I did.
taking these, yeah.
And I did, and so, ew.
I'm glad you did.
But yeah, I just think it's important to cherish those moments with people, and I'm glad that now I know, you know.
Yeah. And I think too, like, on those like last months you had with him, like obviously like we didn't know that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
But like when you and I were talking, like, oh, what'd you do today? And you're like, oh, I saw like my papa, you know, and like you would just be like, oh, like it was so funny he did this, or like we talked about this today. And it's like, I know how much you adored him and how much he adored you, and all those moments were so special. So when the time came where he, you know, passed away, you can remember those things. And you got so lucky, especially like if you guys did not listen to, I don't know what episode it was last season, but that night you hung out with your grandpa, was it before for Christmas? And you're like, grandpa, like I need you to write Chunky for me.
Yeah. And that was the last time I saw him.
And that was the last time you saw him. You're like, I need to ask him, like.
Yeah. I think, and it's weird because I wish, this is probably what I would, people that are younger than us, this is what I would advise. I didn't realize how important those things were, like when I was like early 20s, like in college. Like I just was doing my own thing, and that's okay to do your own thing, but you have to, like, I wish I would have known how important it was. And I was still very close to my family and always saw them, but like I really took the time over the past couple years. Like my papa would just sit and tell me stories, like about when he first came to Whittier, or like, you know, all these different things. And I just think that's so important to do as soon as you can, because like, you know, you're not gonna have like them forever.
My thing, like with my great grandma SB, like I said, I didn't have the best relationship with her. I didn't see her all the time, but I remember like going back years, I would be like, I just need to hang out with her and like ask her all these questions. Like I want to know myself. Like I want to have these conversations with her. Like I don't want to like just hear the stories from my grandpa about when they were growing up. And she's lived in the same house for, I don't know, you know, up until she passed away. She lived in that house forever in Boyle Heights, and has like all these crazy stories of like all these things. And it's like, I wish she could have told me that. Yeah. And while I do feel guilty, I remember, so I'm big on like prayer now, especially. I pray all the time.
Same. Every time I'm in the shower.
That's my thing. I pray as soon as I wake up. I pray on my way to work. Whenever I just like, I feel like it's so corny, but if any of you guys listen to Smino or know who Smino is, he's a rapper. I watched this interview about him, and he was just talking about how like, they're like, oh, like, do you pray? And he was like, I feel like I pray like all the time. He's like, I'm always like in my head just talking like to God, basically. Like he's like my homie, you know, like we're just talking. And I feel like that's how I am. Like it's just very like I'm talking to like Miranda or a friend. Like I'm just like, hey, like this is going on in my life. Like I need some clarity on this. Like, and I remember like months
and
before,
I wouldn't have said this was us a few years ago. I wouldn't have said this is where we were at a few years ago. Not at all.
Like, to be honest, me personally, since I was younger, my family has been pretty religious. Yeah. My mom especially. Church was something like
it was every Sunday,
kind of pushed on us, you know, like we were in Sunday school, like whatever. I just thought like this is who I'm supposed to be. And then I went through my own family stuff and my own mental health issues and trauma. And I remember for a while, I was just like, I wasn't one of those people who's like, there's like no God or whatever. But I just remember I'm like, sure. I'm like, I don't know. I have so many questions, like, you know, and as anyone should, like,
and like, you know, who do you ask?
I'm not going to be the person to be like, you have to believe in God. Yeah. Like that's not me. I have my own personal relationship with him. We're cool now. But before, when a lot of bad things were happening to me, I remember I was like, how could this happen to someone? Like, like if there is people. A God. Yeah. And like, I'm not trying to like get into that discussion, but I pray every day. I pray all the time. It just makes me feel good. But
do you ever feel like this happens to me when I pray? Sometimes I'm like, I'm praying, right? I'm praying. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about this. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about this person.
But wait, that's the thing.
And I'm like,
that's the thing.
Trying to do everyone.
That's why I think like I pray all day pretty much, because like constant. I'm constantly and I'm like, oh, or and I'm also
happens and you're like, oh wait, help.
Growing up, and I just did this I did this like a couple months ago. I was praying, and I remember like before I said like amen, you know, like like closing it off. Yeah. I remember I felt guilty. And then I'm like, I just want you to put guardian angels over everyone in the whole entire world.
Everyone,
like, keep everyone protected. Yeah. Like, just literally everyone, please. Like, and I'm like, and then my ass will go off into a tangent, and I'm like talking to God, and I'm like, I know bad things need to happen, but like all the good things I can, please, like just make them happen. Like, yeah, that's
That
me.
was me.
But
Oh my gosh.
the point
or I'd
of
feel
me
so
bringing,
bad when I'd pray for someone and be like, oh my God, but I forgot that this person is going through this and I
yeah,
need you
that's
to help
why I
them.
just say I pray for everyone in the world.
Everyone.
Like I
Everyone
pray
in the
for
world.
everyone.
Yep.
But the whole point
That's
of me bringing
hilarious.
this up was, as I was trying to say, months before I knew my grandma was going to pass away, like we had more of a feeling she was going to pass away, I started praying about her. And I remember like that, I think that's when the guilt started to set in more. It was almost kind of like I knew like something was coming. And I remember I started praying like, please just like let all my family members know like that how much like I like care about them. Like let her know like I love her. Like, you know, like I don't know how you're going to do that, but let her know like I love her and I'm there for her. And, you know, like just let her know that. And then weeks later, like she passed away, and I just remember like feeling so guilty. But
well, and you never know if people know. I think the hardest thing, right, is like, I know my papa knew I loved him, but I'm like, did he know how much? Like, did he? And how do you ever tell someone that, or how do you ever make them?
no,
They
you
can't.
can't.
I don't think they can. Like, you can
can't.
love someone so much, and I don't think they'll
And
fully ever get it. You know?
I feel awful because like I will sit back and like think about it, and I'm like, how could she think I loved her if I like never went to see her or anything like that, you know? So that for me is hard. But I think before we get any more into it, let's discuss how like our first experiences with like grief and grieving. And I think too, just to clarify, Miranda and I, we are talking about grief and grieving in the sense of someone like a loved one or someone we care about passing away.
Yeah.
Grief is held in so many ways with so many different people. You can experience it through a breakup, like
I was
your
gonna
mourning.
say we've talked
like,
about that.
we've talked about that in previous episodes, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But I just wanted to clarify: we are talking about people passing away, and that's that type of grief. So let's discuss maybe like our first experiences with like grief and grieving, or like losing someone.
I think. Let me try.
I'm gonna open my notes.
I know. I'm trying to. I think the first one that I remember being like a big deal to me, I was probably like, I don't know, like 7 or 8, maybe. I have no idea how old I was when anything happened.
Yeah, see, like I don't either.
I have no idea. But I know Morgan wasn't born, so I was young. It was my great grandma on my dad's side, who I was very close with. Like, she spent a lot of time at my grandma's house. So I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house too. So I would go over and we would watch like soap operas together. Like that was our thing.
Yeah.
Or I'd like read her books. I had this like collection of books at my grandma's, and I would read like the same books to her all the time.
Dang, she was a bookworm at a young age.
I was.
People.
But so like I was very close with her, and one of like the most distinct memories I have of her was when it was like, I think my like 9th birthday, 10th birthday. And I have a picture with her, and I have it framed. It's like in one of my bins with all my storage, and it's like a rhinestone frame. And she bought me this Bratz doll, and that was the last gift I got from her, and I still have it. Like, I still have the Bratz doll. And so that was the first time I had like lost someone and felt it. Like, I was like, oh my God. And we went to her funeral. This is how old I was. I was wearing gaucho pants. Okay, I was wearing gaucho pants. I think I had like pinstripe gaucho.
So we're going to, when you guys are listening to this, it's Monday. There will be a picture of those pants on the Instagram story, because I know there's men on here listening
like,
that have no idea what that is, or there's maybe girls who are too young who don't know what they are.
Who don't know what a gaucho pant is.
So check the story.
But I was wearing gaucho pants, and I remember I was sitting with my cousin, and I was like sobbing, so sad. And I don't know if my dad said it to me or my cousin said it to me. And like it was a super cloudy day, and the sun like came in through the church. And my dad, I think it was my dad, he was like, look, it's your great grandma. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And I was like sobbing. But that was like the first time that I like lost, because other people in the family had died, but
you weren't like close to them.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I don't know them.
That's like when before recording this episode, I was kind of like talking to my mom about like what the topic was today. And I was telling her, like, I remember like telling Miranda this, like not on the podcast, but like just conversations as best friend. Like, I remember like going to so many funerals as a kid. Like I remember
And
like talking
who
to
were
people.
they? Like,
I remember talking to people like in high school or whatever, like just on the top, I guess on the topic of like people passing away and funerals, I guess for some reason we're talking about that. But I remember people like my age being like, "Oh, I've never been to a funeral," or
weird.
like, you know. And I remember being so like, "What?" Like by the time I was like 8, like I had been to however
Same.
many, or at least I thought. So I talked to my mom about this, and she's like, "I didn't take you to a lot of funerals." And in my head, I'm like, "Okay,
I swear I've been to
yeah,
like
like
50.
I swear, yeah, like I swear I've been to a lot." But then like I started really thinking about it, and I think that's when it really hit me that I kind of just try to avoid like grieving. Like personally, I avoid grieving,
Yeah.
and I think when we say Miranda's afraid and has like is very anxious about like death and dying, like I've talked about it on the podcast, like I am not.
Randy's not.
Personally, I'm not afraid to
Yeah.
die. I think like since I was younger, I'm like my time's going to come one day. However it happens, it happens. Like that's not going to hold me back from doing things. I'm sure in the moment if I was like dying or being murdered, like I'd be like fuck this, you know, but
Yeah.
personally, I think I'm okay. But I started thinking, I'm like, what? Like, when did it really hit me? Like, when did someone pass away and it like really changed my life? That was my great grandma. So it was my great grandma on my mom's side. She like, I don't want to say like that woman raised me, but she did. As a baby, and when I was in preschool, she would babysit me. She took care of me. We were so close. My granny, I just called her granny, but her name was Viola. She was,
I love that name.
Like,
that's so cute.
and you know what's crazy is as of recently, I'm like, I always say I'm not gonna have kids. I probably won't, but
If
I'm
you
like,
have a daughter, that should be her name. 100%.
right? Like I just like
can
I don't
see
know if
it.
that'd be her first name, but like that or a middle name. But
So cute.
that was like, she was my woman. Like that was like my rock. Like she was there for me, and even at that age, like I was very young. She passed away my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
And we were close. Like I would still go visit her. She was just like the rock of the family. Like she took care of everyone. Like, you know, she was the woman. And it's so funny because like if you listen to any of my family members talk about her, she was mean. She was like she's like
Something
she was on
about,
your
like,
ass.
yeah.
Like Mexican.
I was gonna say my
women.
nana was feisty.
She was on your ass. Like she used to tell us like eat it all or I'm gonna shove it through your ears. Like just random shit. Like she was the best, but she was so sweet to me and she took care of me and she was a mother. She was a grandma.
Yeah.
Like she really was like I would want to be like her. Like if I was, you know, raising someone. But she passed away my freshman year and I remember like I had never, my grandpa, her husband had passed away like the year before. And like I was close to him. That was hard. Like we were with him until he passed away. Same thing with her. Like I didn't see her pass away, but I saw her on her deathbed, like going through it. And just seeing that alone, like I feel like I never really dealt with it. Like until we were writing notes today, I remember thinking like, wow, I've never let myself grieve ever.
It's very traumatic
Like,
too.
It's insane. Like I don't understand how or why I don't let myself.
It's hard.
But I remember my family was with her like on her last days and it was a Sunday. We were with her all day because it was kind of just like at any moment, you know, like she's gonna go. And I remember the next day I had school and my mom was like, you have to go. And I remember I was like, okay, like I went to school and I was like, promise me, like if anything happens, like you'll call or you'll take me out of school. And I remember going to school and that's when Facebook was in. Sorry guys, I'm crying. So if you're not watching me cry right now on YouTube, you could hear it in my voice. So I'm crying. But I remember going on Facebook after school. I got home and a family member posts something about my grandma passing away and no one told me yet. So this is how I'm finding out about my granny passing away. And I remember just like being so angry,
Yeah.
like so angry with like everyone. Like, how could you not tell me? Like, that was the least you could do. And I remember just like my mom like messaging me and my sister about something, and then I just remember like going off, like no one's gonna say anything, like no one's gonna
Yeah.
tell me, like you guys are just gonna act like nothing's wrong. And I just remember like after that just being angry. Like I wasn't angry at them, like I was just angry and holding it in. And then I remember a couple days later I had a speech in it was like a history class or whatever. And I remember having to discuss like why I took the foreign language class that I took, and I was in Spanish. And during that time, the reason why I was taking Spanish was not only for like, you know, maybe one day be bilingual.
Yeah.
My biggest thing was I wanted to be able to speak and have conversations with my great grandparents, which was my granny. And I have a video of me and her in her hospital, like in her last days. She's teaching me Spanish, and we're talking to each other in Spanish. And I remember saying, oh, like I am taking Spanish so I can have a conversation with my grandma. And then I remember breaking down and I was like, she just died like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And then I remember like running out of the class and everyone was like, oh my God, like what's going on?
Yeah.
And then after that, like I don't remember ever crying about it again.
Yeah. That's wild.
I just kind of like was like, no, I'm not going to. But that is like the first person that like
Yeah.
I lost that I was like, this has really like changed my life.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't remember because I was such a child when my great grandma passed away. I don't remember. I think I had like the initial grief. Like I cried and was sad, but then I was a kid. So like I just
it's like life goes
kept
on.
going. Yeah. And then when my nana passed away on my mom's side, that was, I think I was in college. So that one was like more recent, but
Yeah.
the same thing. Like I loved my nana. She was an angel, but I didn't see her that often, you know?
Yeah.
So I loved her and I missed her, but that was also something where I thought about her often and, you know, but I didn't cry about it often. So
Yeah.
like my papa's death, this is the biggest one I've ever experienced. This is the
Yeah.
closest person I've ever lost. So I didn't know like how to feel about it. And I have, you know, pretty much all of my closest friends have lost their grandparents or have lost some of their grandparents. And I'm lucky to have you guys to, you know, talk me through those
Yeah.
things because I didn't know, like, am I going to cry like this forever? Like, am I going to be driving and see something and start bawling in the car? Like,
And it's crazy because it's like you might.
you might. Yeah. That's,
It really
like,
just depends.
you might. And that's literally what I have in my notes is like, it just comes. Like, it just.
You really have to just take it day by day.
Yeah, and sometimes you're going to drive and like see something or you're going to hear something or you're just going to be zoning out and this memory is going to come into your head and you're going to start crying. And it's okay. And that's
Like-
normal. But it's like adjusting to that and adjusting to that as your new normal is a very weird thing to do and like a very odd, especially for someone. I never used to cry and now I cry all the time. So it was like a bit of a like a shift. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I cry all the time now. Okay.
Yeah. I
But-
think, I don't know.
It's
like,
hard.
That's something that fascinates me. And I would actually really like to talk to a therapist or like a professional about it because I'm curious as to why, like, as much as I say I'm a very vulnerable person and stuff, and I truly
Yeah.
believe I have always been since I was a kid, I was seen as a kid by my family and by like people as sensitive and over emotional or just
You want to
emotional.
know why you don't cry about it? Or you don't let yourself
Yeah,
feel?
because people tell me that shit.
You know why? I think that, and I do think this because sometimes I wrote this down too. Sometimes when I have thoughts about like my papa or whatever, I try to change my train of thought instantly because I'm like, I don't want to
I don't want to
I
feel
don't want
that.
to feel it. And I think it's easier, right? It's easier to not feel the things and to feel sad, even if it's for 10 minutes. It's easier to not feel those things. And
Yeah.
I think too is like a lot of the times our brain knows what happened, but I think sometimes we're like, I don't want to accept that. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to accept that this is. So I think that's why people don't do it. Because you know what? I watched all my family members grieve about this. And they all do it very differently.
Yeah.
And I think that
No
sometimes
one is the same.
no, and I see that a lot of times is they find it easier just to not than
I
to
think
feel
that
it.
is Because that's like my thing was, if I can cry about everything else,
Right? Why not this?
why don't I allow myself to be open and like actually grieve something?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was like, I was old enough to understand and obviously be very hurt about it. I was a freshman in high school, but the other like loss in my life that changed my life was the loss of my grandpa. I lost my dad's dad in 2018. At the time I was living with him, and our relationship, we became super close. We were close when I was little. But like that was just the number one man in my life.
Yeah.
Like he always was. Even when he wasn't around. If you guys don't know, my parents got divorced when I was like 10 years old, and it was a really bad marriage. For a while my dad wasn't in the picture and his parents weren't either. And I just remember like when I became back in their life, when we became close again, I had a conversation with my grandpa about like, I broke down and I was like, how could you leave me?
Yeah.
Like, how could you know your son was doing these things? And like, how could you let your son forget about me? And how could you also forget about me? And I just remember him saying like, I never gave up trying to talk to you. You know, I wanted to be in your life. And we became super close. My grandpa was very, 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 very sick. Which is a whole different story, but we became very close when I lived there. I was going through a lot when my dad was in prison. I was dealing with fighting with my mom and no longer living with my mom, growing up, becoming a young woman, you know, dealing with my stuff. And he was my rock for a long time. He helped me throughout. I was in a very, very toxic relationship. He helped me with that. He helped me out with my school stuff. Like, he always wanted to know how I was doing. And I would leave the house and he would be dying, you know, sick. He was sitting there dying and he would be like, how are you doing, Mija? Like, all he wanted to hear was that I was good.
Yeah.
That's all that he cared about. And when he passed away, I remember every time he went into a surgery or anything and I was in college, I would be like that whole day freaking out. Like, there's a possibility he's not going to come out, you know, because of how sick he was. And it just had to be one night I was out with friends and I decided I wasn't going to go back home that night. And I remember telling myself, go home. And I was like, no, like, I'm drunk. I'm going to stay here. And I remember waking up to like 15 missed calls. Grandpa passed away in his sleep. And luckily I was able to wake up and go see him before they took him. But that just like messed me up. And I don't know if it was just a mixture of like everything that's happened with our relationship over years, or if it was that I have a Steven, my stepfather, who is my dad. I call him dad. He's done everything in the world that he can do for me. I'm not saying he's like not my dad by saying this, but my grandpa was my father.
Yeah.
Like, I lived with him. He was that man for me at that time. And I don't know if it was like losing him, and then also like at the time my dad being in prison and not me not having a good relationship with him like really messed me up, but that destroyed me. That's who I have his name tattooed on me. But that, like, I think I was old enough to be like, what the fuck, like this like is not okay, like I'm not okay. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And at that time, like, I started partying. That's when I started drinking a lot. That's literally when I first started going out. That's when that's how I dealt with it, and it was not good.
And I don't think that you don't know. You never know. You never know how to deal with it, but you really don't know until you're in it, and then you're like, oh my god, like this is. It's a very I don't even know. I don't know how to explain it. But like, and I'm sure you have these all the time. Like, you know, my papa passed from COVID, so we weren't able to be there, but we did like get to Zoom with him, and like, to me, those are all really traumatic memories. Like, they go through my brain, and it's like I see him, you know, when he was in the bed and all these horrible things, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just never see that again in my head, because it's so rough, and it's like you don't want to forget, but
but it's hard to remember
Yeah.
them in that way. And I remember with my great grandma passing away, um, the day she passed away, we have like a family
We're
group
like
chat.
all the tears today.
Yeah, we are. I'm sorry.
All the freaking tears.
We have a family group chat. It's mainly for Levi, my nephew, where we just send, and
Who
I'm
is
sure
an
you have one
angel.
too.
Yes, we do.
So I remember when my grandma passed away, they started sending pictures,
Yeah.
with my grandma SB, and in June they had a birthday party for her because they were like, this might be her last one.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone went over that hasn't seen her, and Levi got to meet her, his great great grandma. He got to experience that.
Ever gets to do that?
And he has 2 great great grandmas. Like, that's why they're like, he needs to meet them. He met her, and everyone's sending pictures from like the party. And I just remember replying like, I don't have any pictures with her.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go to the party because I was on probation at work and couldn't call out because I could possibly get fired.
Yeah.
Or like let go, not fired. But I just remember being like, yeah, I don't have anything. And I remember my mom replying like, oh, we probably have some of you when you were little. And I just remember like, what? Like, I just feel like, I think this is the part that's like hardest for me. And it's like, I know I'm going to say it and it's going to come out of my mouth. And it's like, that doesn't make it true. But I feel like part of me, I don't feel like I have the right to be this sad because I wasn't around or like in her life as much. And I know that's not true.
Yeah, but it's a normal feeling. It is a normal feeling.
Hard.
It is. And it's funny because
oh my God, it's like, why'd I do my makeup?
I don't know. I think that if I could give any advice to anyone that's going through it or that hasn't gone through it, is people always are going to tell you. People always told me, like, really cherish these moments and take all the pictures, but like seriously do those things because
like we say for the memes for a reason.
For the reason, yes. And like like I mentioned, over the past year, like when we would see my papa, I took pictures, or like I have videos of like him and my dad talking, or like when we went over to see the Halloween decorations, I have a picture of him and Morgan, and like, all these things. And it's just so important. And I have tons and tons of pictures with my papa since the day I was born, but you just want them because even if it makes you sad to look at him, or even if you don't want to look at him sometimes because you're going to cry, you want to know you have those things. And like,
that's like, I'm that annoying friend. Like when I say for the memes and
Randy takes pictures of everything, and I love it.
Everything and stupid shit, like things you don't even think you're gonna need. Like I will go back on my photo album and I'm like laughing and smiling at my phone because I'm like, I know I have that moment. And my mom all the time is like, I love how many videos and pictures you have of Levi. And
I'm on Emmy all the time. I'm like, come on, smile.
Like it doesn't even matter. I'm like, he's like running in the photo and I'm like, I'm just so happy I have that. But
because those are things you don't get those things back.
Yesterday I went to visit my dad and my grandma for Thanksgiving, and I haven't seen them in a couple months. And I just remember being there, and my great grandma was there, and like I wasn't getting emotional, but in my head she's in the kitchen and I'm like standing there just taking pictures of her. I'm like, I don't have pictures of her. And like, I hate to say it, but in my head I'm like, I don't know when the last time I'm gonna see her is.
And that goes for anybody. Like,
like
you just don't know.
So I just started taking pictures, and then I was like, I'm so happy I'm here right now. Like I'm able to have this moment with her. But it's crazy because it's like, you don't know. Like someone doesn't have to be old. They don't have to be like my grandma. Like you really just don't know, and
they
you
don't
need
have
to
to
appreciate
be sick.
people.
They don't have to be anything.
Yeah, you need to appreciate
you and
people,
Rodrigo have really taught me that with the photos. Like he takes pictures of everything, so now I'm like, I'm gonna take pictures of everything.
Honestly,
so I'll be like, dee, dee, dee.
I love it because you don't know. Like I've had friends who've passed away at young ages. Like you don't expect that, and it's like, you really don't know, and it's sad. So I think my advice is, I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing when it comes to grieving. You really just got to take it day by day. You guys saw it live here or heard it live here. I just grieved for the first, like allowed myself to grieve for the first time in a long time. Like I was texting Miranda the other day, like honestly, I'm a crybaby, or at least I used to be. I feel like I've just been so like in my head lately and not allowing myself to feel feelings. I've just been very overwhelmed. Because part of me thinks like, although I am doing much better than I may have been doing like last year or the year before that mentally, it's okay to cry. Crying doesn't mean you're set
Yeah.
back or like, like cry, like let yourself feel
Sometimes you can
things.
cry
But
about anything. Like I cry I
oh
cry
my
all the time
God,
now. I cry all the time. I'll be watching like a show and
I
it's
don't
sad and I
know
start crying.
what it is. I don't know what it is, but like this past week, maybe the time's coming and I just don't know. No, I don't think so. No, that time is not
I
coming
cry all
yet.
the time.
But what did I cry? I literally wanted to cry the other day. Oh my God. I wanted to cry about my lunch at work.
It happens. It
I was
happens
so
sometimes.
so hungry.
Yeah, and
And
you're
the
like get
lunch
to the point you're so frustrated and like
literally I text my sister. And this is how you know I was down bad, because me and my sister, we talk but not a lot.
yeah.
And like about, like we talk about Levi or like
Yeah,
random
not about,
stupid
like,
shit.
lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I text her and I was like, I'm on lunch and I'm starving. And she's like, okay, eat. And I was like,
You're like
what I
can't.
brought is so disgusting. And she's like, what? Like, go get food. And I'm like, my lunch is over. I'm like, what? Like, over stupid shit. But no, like,
Me.
the other day, I was watching the fucking Dodger Network, and that was my grandpa's thing. He watched it all the time.
Yeah,
And I remember just being like tearing up because I was like, I wish he was sitting here with me.
Yeah.
Like, it literally could be the smallest things.
Yeah, the other day I drove by this restaurant that my papa told me about the last time I saw him, and I started crying.
Yeah,
I just
like-
looked at the restaurant and I started crying.
So you got to take it day by day, people.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember. This is what I wrote down: to give yourself time, and that it's not like a linear thing. So it's not like you feel this first, and then you feel this, and then you feel this. Like you feel all the things. You feel them at different times. You feel them together. Sometimes you're angry. Sometimes you're so sad. Sometimes you're happy. It's everything.
And that's the thing too, is like, I feel like people always say that like it'll get better with time.
It
But it's
doesn't.
like,
You just get
it
more
doesn't
used to
really,
it.
you just get used to it. So
Yeah.
like, we're not here to tell you like, oh, in 10 years
You're
time
gonna be
you'll be
less
over
sad.
it. No.
No.
Like we say, take it day by day.
And I think
And
I expect, and I don't know if other people do, I expect to feel this way forever, because when you lose someone that's such like a fixture in your life, that doesn't go away. So, yeah, those are
my
my
thing,
thoughts.
or you could be like me, you just avoid it and you just act like it never happened. But that's not healthy.
I was
So
gonna
let's
say I
not
don't
do
know
that,
that I
because then
advise that.
then you break down on camera like I just did.
It's okay.
But I think this, and I hate it because I thought about it after my great grandma just passed away, but it's like every time someone passes away close to me, or I know someone who has someone close to them that passed away, I'm always like, life's so short, and I'm like telling everyone I love them and how much they mean to me. And it's like 2 weeks later, like
forget.
that kind of dies down. You don't do that as much. You get so caught up in life, and like I'm currently so fucking overwhelmed, and I know Miranda is too. But like, it shouldn't take someone dying
No.
for us to tell the people that we give a shit about and love so much that we love them and we care for you and I want to spend time with you. And yeah, so take those fucking pictures for the memes. Give your loved ones a hug, tell them you love them and how much they mean to you, and ask all the questions. If you have a question about something and you want to know something about someone's life, ask it.
Ask.
Unless it's fucking weird, you know what I mean?
You're probably
But
gonna uncover so much
So
stuff
much.
that you didn't know.
see, like that's the thing. I'm so happy that I did that with my grandpa, and I do that like with some people in my life now, because it's like when my grandpa passed away, I spoke at his funeral, and I remember
Same,
other
that
people.
was very hard.
Oh my God. Yeah,
I was
and
sobbing.
one of those doves attacked me, which was
Oh.
funny. So we could talk about that a different day. But I remember other people, family members, coming up and talking about my grandpa, things like I didn't even know. And I was like, it was so amazing to be able to hear that story.
Because they
And-
give everyone else a different
Yeah.
part of them, and that's the cool thing. Because then when you put them all together, you're like, oh my God, like it's just, I love that. And that's my favorite thing too, is like I was just talking to my mom and Rodrigo today about my papa, and she was telling us about like when he was younger, and like I'm like, I wish I knew him when he was younger. Like how
Right?
cool. Like all these things that, and I know those things and he's told me those things, but I'm just so glad that we have all these, and my grandma still tells me stories, and every time I go over, she tells me something new. And so
Like,
it's
isn't it the
awesome.
best though?
Yeah,
Like
I'm
it
like,
makes you
I
feel
had
so
no
good.
idea. And she's like, you didn't know
Like
that?
little did you know,
Yeah.
but
I'm like, wow. Yeah,
it's
that's
crazy because there's like, I feel like you uncover something that almost reminds you of yourself in a way, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like they really are a part of me. Like it's so crazy. But my grandma SB, the one who just passed away, my great grandma, she was known for being feisty, for being a protector. Like she was like, she protected her family, and
she's like the matriarch. Is that what they call it? Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like the.
she was the it girl. But growing up and living and raising Mexican men in Boyle Heights and having to deal with certain things that they were dealing with at that time, I remember my grandpa saying like kids would chase my grandpa home from school, like trying to jump him, and like she would come out and be like, bring your moms over, like I'm a yeah. And my grandma, I will
Oh
post
my
a
God.
picture of her.
She's beautiful.
So you guys
we were
can
just
see.
looking at a picture of her the other day.
She's tiny. She is
Feisty
tiny
little
and
lady.
skinny, and she was feisty. And if any of you guys know, there's a thing, I'll post a picture of it, but there's 3 dots you could get. It's like a tattoo, and it's like my crazy life. That's what it stands for. And I actually have it not tattooed, but you can see it on my hand. I have like 3 moles that actually make up the my crazy life thing, and she has it tattooed like in the same spot.
Oh my God.
Like she got it like when
I
she was
love
young.
that.
But I remember like when I was young, she showed me like, look, like we have that similar thing. And I just remember looking at it the other day and like I started crying because I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe that. Like it's just so silly. Like it's something so
It
silly.
is.
But
Those
I
are the
just remember
best
being
things,
like,
though.
aw, like.
Those
my
are my
grandma.
favorite things. I know. Well,
But yeah, I think that's it. Oh my
I
God, my
think I'm
nose
all
is
cried
running.
out for the day.
Yeah, I need to like fix my makeup, blow my nose.
I know.
We'll be talking to you guys next Monday, and it will be not as
It's gonna
sad.
be fun. I promise.
Yeah. So have a good week, you guys. Tell people you love them. Be kind.
Take pictures.
For the memes. We love you guys. Bye.
Bye.